All right, we are back on the record in case number 2012 CF 55504A, State of Florida versus William Woodward. I'll note the presence of Mr. Woodward at council table with Mr. Eisenmaker and Mr. Robinson, and the presence of Mr. Respis and Mr. Scheiner on behalf of the state. Are we ready to bring Ms. Woodward back to the witness stand and bring the jury back in? Resume cross-examination? Okay, let's bring the jury in, please.
All rise.
Jury's present. We are ready. Please be seated. All right, the jury is present once again in the courtroom. And ladies and gentlemen, did you all follow my instructions over our lunch recess?
Yes.
Is anyone aware of any violations of any of my instructions?
No, ma'am.
All right, very well. Let's bring Ms. Barbara Woodward back to the witness stand, please. Ma'am, if you'd just retake the witness stand, you're still under oath.
Okay.
Thank you. Cross-examination.
Good afternoon. I want to start with you from the beginning, okay?
Okay.
And when I say the beginning, I'm referring to when Ava's present was taken.
Okay.
You don't actually have any direct evidence whatsoever that Ava's the one that actually took that. Isn't that true? That they took Ava's present, the Hembrys.
Direct evidence.
Direct evidence. This is a hunch you have, right?
The evidence that I have is hearsay, so I can
Right. So
say no then?
Well, I can't tell you what to say. I want you to tell me what you know personally that tells you that the Hembrys' daughter, how old was she? She was 8 at the time, right?
I think so, yes.
Right. That she came onto your porch and stole your daughter's present.
Okay, I have no direct evidence then.
Isn't it true that you reviewed your surveillance system or some other system where you came home and you saw Ava and her friends playing in the street? Not Ava, I'm sorry, the Hembrys' children, Ava's former friends, playing in the street, and that's what gave you the conclusion that they had come onto your porch and taken Ava's present. Isn't that how you get there?
And I don't remember them playing in the street, but I don't directly remember that, no.
I'm going to show stage 1. I'm going to give you a link.
Okay.
So Ava's present is taken, and that's on the 3rd
Okay.
that it's delivered, right?
Okay, yes.
Is it?
Yes, it is. I'm sorry.
All right, so sometime after the 3rd, the next day you find out that the present was actually delivered, and you advise this friend, we didn't get it.
Right.
And it's at that point you tell your husband, Mr. Woodward, I think the Hembrys took it, right?
Yes.
And that set your husband off, right?
In what way do you mean those set him off?
That upset him.
It upset him.
Right. And your husband, he's quick to anger, right?
It depends on the circumstances.
Okay, we'll get to that. You recognize stage 1 on the screen?
Yes.
Can you identify your home back in August and September of 2012? It's the top one.
Okay.
And if you need to stand, we can ask the court's
Okay.
permission. Okay. You believe that's your home there? All right, well, here's...
Hold on. Oh, wait, here it is. That's the wrong, that's my house.
And in relation to your house, where do the Crows live?
They live in this house right
And the Hembrys? And the Blakes? Okay, and during that time in August of 2012, living with the Hembrys was also Roger Pecor. Is that correct?
Yes.
And Kimberly Cast, right?
Yes.
And up until this point in time, everybody got along, right?
Yes, for the most part.
Your kids played with their kids. in the street, right?
They played together.
You didn't want them in their house, right?
No, they played in my house.
No, I meant in their house.
Oh, no, I had put a stop to that.
Right, but they were still allowed to play together, and they did that.
Yeah.
And then the 5th happens. What happens on the 5th?
After the,
Right, so you tell your husband that you believe that the Hembry's 8-year-old daughter stole her present, and your husband goes over and confronts Mr. Hembry, right?
yes,
And he's angry, right?
he was upset.
And at that point, he goes over there and basically accuses Mr. Hembry without any evidence, Mr. Hembry's daughter, without any evidence, of stealing his daughter's present, his being Mr. Woodward's present, daughter's present.
That's not my understanding of it.
Were you there?
No, I was inside the house.
That's the first time he goes over, right? That's the politely going over and telling Mr. Hembry, give me my daughter's present back, right?
It's my understanding he asked.
Okay. And then he comes home, right?
Yes.
And then he calls the police. And he wants the police there because he himself and you acknowledge that Mr. Woodward is quick-tempered. And if the police are there, he won't act unreasonable, right? He's less likely to snap.
That's not my understanding of why he asked them to go.
Okay. So the police are called, but they come, right?
They did come, yes.
And at that point, he goes over there again with the police now and accuses Mr. Hembry's daughter of theft.
I believe so. I did not hear the whole conversation.
Okay. And then the police talk to everyone, right?
Yes.
And your husband goes home.
Yes.
And then your husband goes over again, doesn't he? He goes back into the street and yells at Gary and tries to get Gary to come in the street to fight him. Isn't that true?
I don't believe that was a third time.
Okay. When was that? Because that's the moment in time that your husband is accused of having a firearm, right?
Yes, but I don't believe he came home and went back. Maybe I'm mistaken.
Okay. Well, the police left, right? And then came back again. Do you remember?
Trying to. I believe, yes. I believe they did leave and then come back.
They came back because the Hembrys called.
Right.
Right.
Okay, that makes sense, yes.
Right. Because your husband was standing in the street trying to get Gary to come fight him. Right?
Okay.
That happened, right?
Yes, that happened.
And Gary said, no, come in my yard. I'm not going in the street, right?
Yes.
All right. So that was the 5th. That's what starts this downturn in relationships, right?
Okay.
And everything that's revolving around that is this belief that Mr. Hembry is taking pictures of your chickens and is going to report them, right?
Wait, can you back up and repeat that?
So on the 5th, what we believe is going on the 5th at this point, all right, or what we've heard, is that there's an accusation that Mr. Hembry's 8-year-old daughter stole Ava's present, right?
Okay.
So let's start at the beginning. Okay? Do you know that on the 5th there's a confrontation between your husband and Mr. Hembry about Ava's present?
Yes.
The police are called, right?
Okay, yes.
Okay, yes?
Yes, they were. I'm sorry.
The police were called. Mr. Hembry comes out and takes pictures of your chickens. right?
Yes,
Okay. Your husband gets really upset by that.
yes,
He runs out, and that's when he begins threatening Mr. Hembry and trying to get him to fight him, right?
yes,
And that starts this back and forth between the houses at that point, right?
yes.
The next event that I believe you talked about was interactions between the kids and the kids being Ava and the Hembry, Piccior, Blake children, right? Or I guess it's just the Hembry and the Blake children, right? Is that right?
Is that the next thing I talked about?
Right. Well, we discussed that your children had gotten along up until this point,
There were incidences before that with the children.
but they played together.
They did play together up until several weeks before her birthday.
Okay.
The girls had started bullying her before that.
And I'm sorry, excuse me. You were asked on direct examination if you had a conversation with Miss Cast about her children's behavior towards your daughter. Do you remember that? Mm-hmm. And you had said that her response to that was to immediately yell at her children to make them stop. Is that right?
That's correct.
And then a few minutes later, you said actually her response was, or she changed her position completely to, now I want my children to torment your children, basically.
There were two separate conversations.
But you had forgot about the second conversation, right?
An hour ago when I was...
Right.
Yes, I had forgotten.
But you remember it now.
Oh, yes.
I want to talk to you a little bit about that event that happened on the 5th. So let's get a little more specific. Can you identify on States 1 where that occurred? After the photographs are taken of your chickens and your husband runs out there in anger and begins trying to get Mr. Hembry to fight. Where does that happen? Can you identify on there?
It was around this area here.
So on Smith. It was on Smith. It wasn't on Lane.
Right.
And it was more in front of the Hembry residence.
Yes. Then in relation to my house, yes.
You may. You may.
I'm showing you States. I just want to ask if you recognize the handwriting. Whose handwriting?
That's my handwriting. Yes, I'm sorry. Yes. 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 Yes.
These yeses are yeses.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, that is my
I
handwriting.
should ask you questions.
No,
I'm sorry.
Question?
Whose handwriting is that?
That is not my handwriting.
Do you know whose handwriting it is?
I would say that's my husband's handwriting. That would be my husband's handwriting. I believe that's my husband's handwriting.
So from the 5th on, the type of conduct that you were experiencing was basically yelling. You had bad neighbors, right?
Yes, there was more than yelling, but yes.
Obscenities, up until you said, I'm a little confused. There was a threat towards to have someone sodomize your daughter. Right? That happened. We heard that, actually.
Mm-hmm.
When was that?
That was after the injunction hearing.
And the injunction hearing was when?
I believe it was the 11th?
Okay. But you're not positive on that.
I can't remember.
When do you believe the injunction hearing was in relation to the shooting?
Oh, a couple of weeks? I believe it was a couple of weeks.
But as you sit here today, 2018, you're not sure on that.
Well, I didn't bring my notes.
All right. If I told you the injunction hearing was on the 29th of August, would you say that that was right or wrong?
I would say that is not correct.
Maybe I could show you something that would help you remember that. Can I approach the witness?
You may.
I'm sorry. You recognize that?
Oh, okay. This is the paperwork from the hearing? Okay.
Is that refresh your memory that the injunction hearing was actually on the 29th of August?
I really thought it was earlier than that, but okay, it says 29th of August.
But the injunction hearing is important, right? Because that's the day that, in your mind, and it got worse after that point, right? So did
Yes.
the threat to sodomize your daughter happen before or after the injunction hearing?
It happened after the injunction hearing.
And that was recorded on your surveillance system?
No, I'm wrong. That's incorrect.
Okay. Actually happened the 11th. Does that sound right?
That's what I'm thinking of. That's what happened on the 11th, because that is what prompted us to seek help from the court.
Petition for the injunction.
Yes.
And the Blakes, the Hembrys, they filed an injunction against you as well, right?
Against me?
Well, against your husband,
Okay.
right?
Yes, they did.
And both injunctions were denied.
They were.
And it's after that hearing that your husband attacks Mr. Hembry, right?
Are you talking about
At the
the
court.
parking lot? Yes.
Let's go back to the 11th. You remember that day?
Yes.
And that seems to be the day that sticks in your mind because of these statements made by the women, right?
Yes.
And do you know who said it?
Oh, yes, I do.
Who said it?
It was Carrie who said it.
And when that interaction happened, where were you at?
Standing in my yard.
And where were you at before that?
While I was in my house before people were arguing. I'm not sure what you're getting at.
You were in your kitchen, right?
Okay.
And you were looking out your window, and you saw William Francis Woodward walking over to Mr. Hembry. Do you remember that?
I don't remember that.
Is there something that could potentially refresh your memory to that? You took notes around this time, right?
You just showed me notes, but I don't remember writing them. What? Oh, the Saturday one?
And tell me if you...
Do you want me to read it out loud?
No. I want you to read it to yourself, and tell me if that refreshes your memory as to the events that occurred on the 11th of August, 2012.
Okay, what was your question?
That's the events of the 11th, right? What you just read there? Does that refresh your memory as to the 11th?
Yes, although this has a different date.
Well, what is that?
This says August 22nd.
Okay. Well, the threat to harm your daughter happened on the 11th, right?
I believe so.
So those events, those are your notes, right? Do you look at all those pages? Those are,
Oh, I
you typed
didn't.
that up, right?
The attorneys may approach. All right, so Mr. Shiner, you may proceed.
Thank you.
Is there a question pending? Are you still asking her to refresh her recollection?
I need to know, I just need to know, Ms. Woodward, if your memory has been refreshed as to the events that occurred on August 11th, 2012.
I am comfortable with the events. I'm uncomfortable committing to a date.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
Okay. Okay.
Testifying from your memory, okay? So on the 11th, or the date that this obscenity, this vulgarity, was slung at your family, isn't it true that prior to that happening, Mr. Woodward Sr., William Francis Woodward, your father-in-law, went over to the Hembrys and
That
told
is
them,
not correct. I'm sorry.
that's not correct. When did that happen?
My father-in-law is not the one who went over there.
Who went over there?
It was a neighbor.
Who's that?
It was a neighbor named William.
Okay, who? William who?
Smith. I believe that his name is Smith.
And you observed this, and your husband was involved in this, was he not?
He was not involved in that, no.
Not involved in that, but he made himself involved. He was walking his dog, right?
He was walking the dog.
Right. And the neighbor was telling the Hembrys to get out, leave the neighborhood.
Yes, he did.
And you went out there and you told your husband to come inside,
I did.
and he didn't, did he?
He did not.
Right. He gave you the dog, and he stayed out there.
Yes.
And he proceeded to get in an argument with Roger Pecor, right?
With Roger specifically, I'm not positive about that, but
with one of them.
yes.
And when he got in that argument, he basically told him, I'm not afraid of you, you're scared of me. And they went back and forth, right?
Yes.
Okay. And it's at that point that the vulgarities start getting slung back and forth. The threat towards your daughter, you come outside, right? Because you hear your husband and the Hembrys and them
Yes.
over there yelling back and forth. And it's at that point you hear the obscenities targeted at your family and your husband slinging back, I'm going to dismember you or disembowel you, right?
That's not exactly how he said it, but he said something to that effect.
Gut you like a fish, which one was it? Gut you like a pig,
I don't remember that, no.
which one was it? Do you know?
Let me think. It was. I remember something about if something happens to my daughter, I'll kill you.
Well, he said that too, right? In addition to the other.
That's what I remember.
They were nasty both ways, right?
It was nasty.
Right. Your husband was nasty, they were nasty. This other William fella, I don't know, was he nasty?
I don't know, I'm sorry.
Very good. So that event happens, and then you petition for the injunction.
We did.
We talked a little bit about the injunction hearing. Both parties filed for them. The injunctions were dismissed.
Yes.
In that period of time, though, your husband's weapons were removed from the house, right?
They were.
Okay. And what type of weapons did your husband have?
I'm not very good with that sort of thing. Some type of handgun.
Okay. Did he have any rifles, or is it just handguns?
I believe there was a rifle.
And we know there was at least one handgun, right? Was there more than one handgun?
I want to say yes.
And so the weapons are removed from the home, and then ultimately they come back into the home.
They did.
When did they come back into the home?
It was after the injunction hearing.
Was it the same day?
It might have been the same day.
So that evening, your husband would have come home, and then his father would have brought them back?
That's not the order in which, well, yes, that's what happened. We came home and the police had come and yes, the guns came back.
The police came because you were getting the guns back?
No.
The police came because they were laughing?
I don't believe we were the ones who called the police that day.
All right.
But they told us we needed to arm ourselves.
And now when you came home that day, they were clearly angry. When I say they, I'm referring to the Hembrys, the Blakes, the Picayors. They were upset, right? The 29th, I'm sorry, the day of the injunction. I'm sorry, the dates mean nothing to you, right?
I'm so sorry.
No, that's fine. The dates mean nothing. So the day of the injunction hearing, so we'll use events rather than dates. The day of the injunction hearing, when you came home, they were clearly upset. Well, when you came home, they were happy, right? They were laughing.
Yes.
And then later on in the day, they appeared to be angry and upset, right?
They didn't appear to be upset until the argument occurred.
And what argument was that?
Where, oh no, that was, give me a second.
You're blending your days, I think.
Yes, I am. 1 second. I don't remember them being upset. I know they called the police on us, but I don't remember why that day. But I do remember the police coming to speak to us.
There were a couple other events that I wanted to talk to you about, and they involved the dogs. Okay? And the first one I want to talk to you about is when you come home one day and you see a dog print in your front yard. Do you remember that?
I do not exactly remember it, but it was in my notes that you just showed me.
Okay. Did that refresh your memory?
Not exactly.
What I'm interested in, though, in that particular event, though, that's the time that Sergeant House came to your residence. Do you remember that? Do you remember him?
Mm-hmm. I do.
And he actually came in your house, right?
He did.
And he, at that point, he looked at your surveillance system.
Did he?
Didn't he?
I don't remember that.
Let's see if we can do this. To be clear, what I want you to do, I don't want you to read from that.
Okay.
I want you to read it quietly to yourself. If you remember sufficiently to testify from your own memory, I want you to tell me that. If you cannot, I want you to tell me you cannot, okay?
I do remember the video with the dog. And I remember Sergeant House coming to our house, but I don't remember him watching the video, but he must have.
Well, only you would know, right? So, either way, he came to your house and then he went and told them, keep your dog locked up, right?
He told them to keep him on a leash outside.
And that particular video that you either showed him or you reviewed yourself was basically his dog getting out and basically running amok in the neighborhood, right?
Well, I don't know what he said to the dog, but
But you saw him trying to get him, and the dog was running away, right?
I heard on the video him calling the dog.
Right.
He did not make an effort to retrieve the dog.
And the dog basically ran down lane, right?
That sounds right.
Ran away. Dog ran away.
Yes, that sounds right.
All right. And then there was another incident involving the dogs in which your husband was walking your dog in front of the house.
Yes, yes.
And the dogs come running out of either the Picayore or the, I'm not sure if it was the Blake residence or the Hembry residence, but they come running out.
They did.
And also in that video is two other people running out chasing the dogs, right?
I believe so.
And the police were called in that incident, right?
They were.
And that was Officer Candia Roman came out that time.
Okay.
Do you remember her?
I do remember her.
And she actually came into your house and retrieved the video of that incident, right?
Oh, yes. Yes, she did retrieve that video.
And that would have been the times that you called and said there was videos available, and Titusville looked at them, right?
And what?
And Titusville Police Department looked at them, right?
They didn't look at all the video.
Well, they didn't look at 30 days worth of
Well,
the
no.
house that day, right?
No, they looked at that, I believe.
The event that you were calling about.
I believe it was that event, and I'm not sure who reviewed it.
All right, so when you told Mr. Eiseminger that they never looked at your video or collected the video, you just forgot.
Well, I can say I don't know who looked at the video. I know she looked at the video,
And she actually collected it. She took it.
but I am not aware of anyone else looking at the video.
The conduct that you're describing, other than the threat towards your daughter and the threat at your house that happened on the same day when your husband and this William Smith, the other neighbor,
I believe that's his last.
were engaged in that, basically trying to kick the Hembrys out of the neighborhood. So other than those two things, the conduct that you're really talking about that was bothersome to you was obscenities, right? They're just being vulgar, name calling, and beeping of the horn, right? They would lean on their horns in the neighborhood
They would.
and drive through and beep at each other, that kind of stuff.
I can't say they were beeping at each other.
At nothing, basically, right?
I believe they were making the noise at us.
But regardless, it was horn honking in their cars.
It was.
But then after the 29th, that's when things ramp up, after your husband gets physical with Mr. Hembry, right? That's what I think you said before.
Okay, yes,
So it was after the injunction hearing.
after the hearing.
All right. Let's talk about the 2nd. Okay, do you remember that day,
Yes,
September 2nd? You were out to dinner, you went to your parents for dinner, and then you came home, right?
yes.
When you came home, same car or separate car? I was unclear there.
I think we rode together in the same car.
But whatever the video has will show that, right?
It should, yes.
And it was the whole family. When I say the whole family, it was you, your son, Mr. Woodward, and Ava.
Yes,
And when you get home, is there anyone else there?
yes.
Who else is there?
My in-laws were there.
Did they meet you there? Or did they come from where you came from?
They did not come from where we came from. They met us there, I guess.
And do you remember what time it was when you got home?
I'm sorry, I don't remember.
But the video would have that.
Oh, I'm sure.
And what do you do when you get home? Do you stay outside? Do you go inside? What do you do?
We went inside
Who's we?
Oh, I'm sorry. I went inside with the children. I'm not sure what everyone else did.
And when you got home, was there anything going on that had your attention?
Yes.
What was happening?
The neighbors were all out in their yard and carport area. You could,
There was a lot of them,
there was a lot of people.
and they had music playing.
Yes?
Sustain, you need to let her finish.
I'm sorry,
her response,
just-
please, before you ask your next question.
Just trying to help along. I'm sorry, ma'am. Go ahead.
There was several people at the house.
The people that you would describe as being, I'm going to describe them, you didn't describe them, as extra people to the residence, because the people that are normally there are who? The Hembrys, so Gary Hembry, Kim Cast, so we'll call them the Hembrys, the Blakes, right, so Carrie Blake and Bruce Timothy Blake, then Roger Piccior, and his girlfriend, right?
Yes?
Who else is there besides them?
Overruled, you can answer.
Who else was there?
Besides them, yeah.
Okay, well, their children were all there. There were several other friends there that had been coming by for some time. I recognize them, even though I don't know all their names.
Okay. Now, when you say friends, friends of what we'll call the adults, or friends of what we'll call the children?
Okay, I will say friends of the adults.
And the ages of the children we're talking about, do you know?
Of
That were outside when you got home?
the ages of the children, it was
Yeah, just
their...
not all their ages. Bad question.
Okay.
The youngest to the oldest, what would you say?
I don't know. It was their children.
All right. So you come home, you go inside immediately.
Pretty quickly.
Do you ever go back outside?
I don't remember if I did.
And what do you do when you're inside?
Take care of the children, get them ready for bed.
Do you give your son a bath?
I probably did. I don't remember specifically, but
Now, the whole time you're in the house, you can hear them. Yes or no?
yes.
Are there moments in time when you can't hear them?
Yes.
What's the longest you say you went when you couldn't hear them?
I don't know. I don't think I was specifically listening for that.
Okay. Where was your husband during this time, when you first get home?
I believe he came inside with me.
And your in-laws, do they stay?
Yes, they stayed for a little while.
How long do you think they stayed?
I'm not sure exactly.
Did they leave before or after the children went to bed?
Honestly, I don't know. I was pretty caught up in just trying to take care of the children.
Do you remember anything happening when your in-laws left?
And I don't remember when they left.
And approximately what time would you say you went to bed?
It was later than usual.
What would usual be?
I usually went to bed about 9:30 or 10. Actually, at that time, I was getting up very early in the morning. So I usually went to bed about 9. But I know it was later than that. I'm sorry, I don't know exactly.
At some point through the evening, you had a conversation with your husband, though, about going and staying at his parents' house, right?
Yes.
You wanted him to go stay there because you were worried about him.
I wanted us to go, all of us to go stay there.
All right. I want to talk to you about your concerns about this whole process from the very beginning, okay? And what I want to talk to you in terms of is the thing that was really concerning you was that you knew your husband was quick to anger, right?
Somewhat.
And so that you were concerned that something that like happened at the injunction hearing would continually happen if your husband was left alone, right?
I would not say that's correct.
Because it was, so you have the situation at the injunction hearing where basically Gary's leaning against his car. You said he had this look on his face. He says something, you don't know what, and your husband beelines for him, right?
Yes.
Okay? And then you have the situation where Gary takes pictures of your chickens and your husband again beelines for him.
And that's not exactly correct.
Well, how did it?
There was conversation. He didn't just go out there and
Well, he
go
ran
after
out there.
Gary because he had a camera.
He went out there, he was angry. He wanted to know why he was taking pictures of his chickens.
That doesn't mean he was angry.
I think you said he was angry.
Did I say he was angry? I don't remember him being angry, but if that's what I wrote. But he didn't just go out there and go after Gary because he had a camera. He went out there to ask him, what are you doing?
But that was your concern all along, though, is that your husband was quick-tempered and that he doesn't always respond rationally.
That was not my primary concern.
But it's a concern you had, right?
I would say it's a concern that I had.
That your husband would respond irrationally to an emotional situation.
I feel like my words are being used against me.
I don't want to do that.
But that's not what I said but that's not what I meant. It's not being told in the correct context.
Well, I guess I want to understand, okay? And I'm not trying to twist your words. I don't want to do that. But what I want to know is, on more than one occasion in your writings and in your affidavits that we've looked at, you have made indications that your husband was quick-tempered, essentially.
The attorneys may approach.
Can I approach the witness?
Question? I just asked if there was a question. So.
Have you previously said on any occasion that your husband was quick-tempered or quick to anger?
Anywhere, ever?
As it relates to this particular case, in the time frame from August 5th through August 12th. We'll narrow it to there.
I don't know. I don't know if I ever said that to anyone.
Had you ever reduced it to writing in any way to provide it to someone?
Overruled, you can answer.
I'm sorry, can you say it again?
Did you ever memorialize that in any way?
I don't know. I gave over all my notes, and I haven't looked at them in...
Okay. I don't know is a fair answer. I'm going to show something to you and ask if that refreshes your memory as to doing it.
You may approach the witness.
I would like you to look at that. I don't want you to read it out loud. I want you to review it.
Okay.
And when your memory is refreshed as to whether or not you ever memorialize that your husband is quick to anger, his memory is refreshed.
So, yes, I did say that.
Well, is your memory refreshed? I don't want to know if apparently it's there. I want to know.
Let me be clear on the process. If They're asking you to refresh your recollection. If you would please look at the document. Once you've had a chance to look at the document, respond as to whether that refreshes your recollection or not. But don't read from the document. In fact, if you would just turn it over, that would be
Okay.
helpful. Okay?
Is your memory refreshed?
Yes.
Okay, had you ever done that before?
Had I
Do
ever...
you remember feeling that way, that your husband was quick to anger?
Yes.
Okay, what about impulsiveness? Controlling his impulsiveness.
Yes.
You agree that he has that issue?
Yes.
Ma'am, thank you. I don't have any further questions. It's fine, leave it or fine, move it.
Redirect?
Thank you. Sir, I want to start with the concept. Several times during the state's questioning, they made the reference to the back and forth. Did you ever see your husband initiate any conflict?
Overruled.
Can you say it again?
Did you ever see your husband initiate any conflict with the Hembry, Piccior, Blake gang?
I did not.
You did see your husband react at various times to them initiating contact, didn't you?
I did.
Now, do you consider that back and forth or a response to what they're talking about?
I would consider it reacting to what's being said.
Okay. Now, the day that you heard Carrie Blake make these threats against your daughter and your family as a whole, were you aware of the fact that Kim Cass had previously made them earlier?
Sustained.
Did you ever hear Kim make similar comments before Carrie adopted them and made them?
No.
You were in the house, or just before you heard Carrie Blake say that, correct?
I was outside for...
I thought you had testified.
Sorry.
I'll rephrase.
Okay.
Ma'am, you had testified that just before you heard Carrie make these comments, you were in the kitchen and then walked out.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Now, Mr. Woodward, your husband, was already down there when you were in the kitchen, correct?
Yes.
As a matter of fact, his involvement was reacting to threats by Mr. Piccior against Mr. Smith.
Sustained.
Well, the state asked you about him getting involved in a back and forth with Mr. Piccior. You never observed any back and forth, did you?
No, not exactly.
Now, the state asked you about some threats by your husband to disembowel, gut, etc. I think you said that you recalled him saying something about, if my daughter is harmed, I'll kill you. Is that
Yes.
correct? Was that after the threat to have your daughter sodomized by people?
Yes, it was.
Was it after the threat to have your house burned down while you slept?
Yes.
Is that something that he was engaging in a back and forth or a reaction to a horrible threat?
I would say that's a reaction.
Let's talk about your concerns about whether or not your husband was quick-tempered. He suffered from some psychological problems, is that correct?
That's right.
He was medicated for that.
Yes.
And he didn't deal well with stressful situations, is that fair?
Yes, that's fair.
Now, whatever you may have put in your notes about your concerns of quick temper, you were doing that in the context of this constant harassment and pressure that he was being placed under by the Hembry gang. Isn't that true?
Yes.
Now, you're not quick-tempered, are you?
No.
You had problems dealing with that stress as well, didn't you?
Yes.
With your neighbors, you didn't have concerns about them being quick-tempered, did you? Said the crows. You ever have any concerns that they are quick-tempered people?
Not that I saw.
Okay. But they had problems dealing with the stress that they were subjected to by this gang, didn't they?
That I'm aware of, yes.
Even Mr. Smith, William Smith, apparently he had so much problem that he wanted him out of the neighborhood, correct?
Yes.
Is he quick-tempered?
Not that I ever saw, no.
So whatever they were doing were causing a lot of people's problems, whether or not they had problems coping with stress and suffered from the problems. Was your husband the only person that you were concerned about reacting?
Overruled. Answer it.
I'm sorry, can you say it again?
Was your husband the only person that you were concerned about that might react to this abuse they and you were being subjected to?
No.
Now, was your husband, concern about your husband's temper, your major concern during this time period?
No.
What was your major concern?
The safety of my family.
Safety of your family vis-a-vis who? Who were you concerned was a threat to your family?
I was very concerned about all of them.
Again, I'm sorry. All of them as who?
I'm sorry. I was concerned about Gary and Roger and Kim and Carrie and Bruce and even the kids. I was concerned that they would harm us.
Now, again, I want to make sure I understand the sequence because the state got into it. I believe that you had indicated on direct that when you first brought your concerns about Kim's Kathy, children bullying Ava and Ethan, that she reacted appropriately. Is that correct? She yelled at them. She told them to stop.
Yes.
But after August 5th, and I understand you're not real great on dates, but after the problems in the relationship changed, she changed her tune again. Is that correct?
She did.
And that's the sequence of the events where she was standing in her driveway and relating what you had told the jury earlier. Is that
Yes.
correct? And
Yes.
what was that again? What did she say when she was standing in her driveway?
We were standing in her driveway, and she said she would tell those kids to torment my daughter until she could not function anymore.
Did they torment your daughter after that
Yes.
on an everyday basis?
Yes.
Did the children ever call you names?
I don't remember if they did or not.
Okay. Did I understand your testimony correctly? You're saying that it was after the police were called by someone other than yourself that the police came over to speak with you and advised your family to arm themselves to protect them against the Embry-Picayune Blake gang. I'm actually repeating her question, her answer. I want to make sure I had it correct.
Overruled.
Did you understand the question?
Yes.
You did not call the police, correct?
We did not call them that day, no.
That as a reason, they spoke with that group, correct?
Yes.
Then they came over and spoke with you,
Yes.
and that's when they told you to arm yourself?
They did.
Right after talking with the Embry-Picayune Blake gang?
They did, yes.
Nothing further.
Any recross? Thank you very much, ma'am. You may step down.
Thank you.
She may. I have the attorneys approach, please? All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a restroom stretch break. If you would leave your notebooks on your chairs and make sure that you follow my instruction during the recess. We'll take a 10-minute recess. Thank you. All right, please be seated. We are back on the record in case number 2012, CF 55504A, State of Florida versus William Woodward. I'll note the presence of Mr. Woodward at council table with Mr. Eiseminger and Mr. Robinson, and the presence of Mr. Schreiner and Mr. Reskus on behalf of the state. Ready to bring the jury back in and call your next witness?
I am.
Okay, let's bring the jury in, please.
All rise. Jury's present.
We are ready. Please be seated. The jury is present once again in the courtroom. And ladies and gentlemen, did you follow all of my instructions during our last recess?
Yes.
Is anyone aware of any violations of any of my instructions?
No.
Defense may call its next witness. Ava Woodward, please. Good afternoon. Will you please step to the podium and please raise your right hand to be sworn in. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth so help you God? Please have a seat over here on the witness stand. If you would please state your full name.
Ava Renee Woodward.
Thank you. You may inquire.
Thank you. Ms. Woodward, first of all, what is your relation to William Theodore Woodward?
He's my dad.
Now, back in 2012, where were you living?
1960 Smith Drive in Titusville.
I guess I'll start with, how old are you now?
I'm 17.
Okay, how old were you back in 2012 in August, September area?
I was 12.
Okay. When is your birthday?
August 4th, 2000.
So you just turned 12.
Yes.
Okay. Now, taking you back to that July, August, September time period in 2012, where were you living? What was your physical address?
I was living 1960 Smith Drive, Titusville.
Okay. And where were you going to school?
I was going to Jackson Middle School in Titusville.
Okay. What grade were you in?
7th.
Okay. Now, during that time period, who were some of your all's neighbors in that area?
Gary Hembry, Roger, I can't say his last name, Carrie, Bruce, Crystal, their kids, Corey, Zach Hembry, Destiny, Crystal's little sister, Jessica, Roger's girlfriend, I believe, Kim, Lydia, Scott, the lady next to us, I can't remember her name off the top of my head.
Okay. Let's talk about some of the children that lived in your neighborhood.
Okay.
Did you ever have any problems in this time period, July, August, September 2012, with any of, let's start with Kim Cass' children?
I did.
Who were they? Which of the children were
Can't remember names.
they? Okay. What kind of problems did you have with them?
An example would be me walking home from the bus stop. They would be yelling my name, saying rude things, and you can't stop it. But I'd be walking home and they'd just yell random stuff at me.
Okay. How did that make you feel?
I felt pretty upset. I couldn't do anything about it. I couldn't retaliate. I was scared.
Okay. Now, did Miss Cass ever try and stop her children from harassing you?
Not that I know of.
Did any of the other children in that group harass you during that time period?
Yes.
Who else?
Crystal, Corey, Destiny, Destiny's friends. It must be the kids. I can't remember their names. Zach.
And what kind of things were they doing to you?
Just calling me names and yelling my name out as I was walking home from the bus stop.
Okay. Did they ever direct any of this toward your brother? Ethan's 4 years old then?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I recognize that he wouldn't have been going to the bus stop at 4 years old, but did they ever direct any of this abuse toward him?
Not that I know of.
Okay. So you were the primary target.
Yes.
Now, did any of the parents of these other kids ever do anything to try and control their behavior?
No.
To your knowledge, did they actually encourage the behavior?
As far as I know, yes.
Now, were you also aware of conduct directed toward you and your family by the adults in the situation? What kind of things were you aware of that the adults were doing?
I knew that they would stand by the street corner and yell my dad's name all the time. Just random insults for the most part. They would wait for us to come home, stand on the street corner, stand outside, wait for us to come home.
How did that make you
Not great. It was belittling.
feel? Did you have any concerns for your own safety?
I did.
What kind of concerns?
I was scared that one day they might just decide to come across the street and stand at our house and yell at us.
Did you have any concerns for your brother's safety?
I did, because he was only 4. He can't defend himself.
How about concerns for your parents' safety?
I was scared for them too.
Now, these things that you observed when you were coming home, could you actually hear them from inside your house?
I could.
In your bedroom?
Yes, sir.
They were that loud?
Yes.
Is this something that was infrequent or frequent?
Pretty frequent. Pretty frequent over the past couple months.
And let me ask you, in terms of the harassment by this group's children, has that even ended right up until these days, right now?
Not really.
I'm sorry. May I have the attorney's approach, please? Next question?
Let me take you to September 2nd, 2012. Do you remember what you were doing earlier that evening?
I do not.
Okay. Long time ago, right?
Yes, sir.
Do you remember with specificity any of the events of that night?
No.
Do you recall your feelings about what was going on?
Most definitely.
Okay. During that evening, did you hear any of this type of conduct directed toward your house by the Hembry-Picayune Blake gang?
Yes.
Overruled, you can answer.
Yes.
Okay. Now, can you remember the details of what was actually said that you heard?
No.
Could you explain to the jury what you heard and how it affected you in terms of your feelings that night? Okay, I'll break it up. Can you give us any specifics of what you heard?
I couldn't tell you what was said.
Okay. Can you tell us how it made you feel?
Yes.
Could you tell the jury how it made you feel?
I was scared. I didn't know if they were going to try and hurt us. I was scared.
Did there come a point in time where you actually got out of bed and spoke with your father that evening
Yes.
and expressed those fears to him?
Yes.
And he attempted to reassure you, is that correct?
Yes.
Sent you back to bed.
Yes.
Were you able to immediately go back to sleep?
No.
What was going on?
I was scared. I couldn't sleep.
What sort of things were you still able to hear things?
I could hear. Yes. I couldn't hear what they were saying. I knew they were yelling.
Okay. Did that cause you to have concerns for your safety?
Yes.
Probably should have concerns for your brother's safety,
Definitely.
your mother's safety. You know that were you aware of the fact that she had taken some medication and actually was asleep under the influence of medication? What was your knowledge about your mother's sleeping condition?
I just knew she was sleeping.
Did you have concerns? I may have asked this, and I apologize if I'm repeating, but I got out of order. Did you have concerns for her safety?
I did.
What kind of concerns did you have for her safety?
She wouldn't be in the right frame of mind to try and defend herself. She wouldn't know what's going on.
Did you have concerns for your father's safety?
I did.
What kind of concerns did you have for your father's safety?
I didn't know how he was going to react to it. I didn't know what was going to happen to us.
Now, did there come a point in time when you were able to get to sleep?
No.
So you pretty much stayed awake throughout the night?
Yes.
And were you even aware of the fact that your father had left the home?
No.
You were just staying in your room, trying to get to sleep, reacting to what you were hearing.
Yes.
The things that you were hearing, did they reach the level that you considered them credible threats that you were considering?
Okay, attorneys may approach.
Now, first of all, I want to make it clear, Ms. Woodward, that we're talking about September 2nd into the early morning hours of September 3rd, 2012. Okay? Now, you've testified that you don't recall any of the specifics of what you heard that night.
No.
Did you hear some things that you considered to be threatening?
Their voices were threatening.
Okay,
The way they sounded was threatening.
okay. So it was more the tone and tenor of what you were hearing?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you believe that they were capable of representing a real threat to you?
Sustained.
Were you concerned that the threat was imminent?
Yes.
Now, afterwards, at some point the next day, you were interviewed by a detective, that time her, Detective Kane Watson. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And she asked you what you saw, is that correct?
Yes.
Did she ask you what you heard?
Can't remember off the top of my head.
Did she ever ask you how you felt?
No.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Cross-examination?
Ms. Woodward, you were 12 when this happened. You've been 12 for a few weeks, right? When this incident happened?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that particular evening, had you gone out with your parents over to your in-laws' house? Grandparents' house. I call them in-laws because it's Woodward's in-laws. But your grandparents, your mother's parents.
I can't tell you off the top of my head. I don't remember.
Okay. And that's why I just want to know what you remember. Did you, well, let me ask this. Do you recall if you were there that day, which is a Sunday, going into Monday, or you came home?
I can't remember anything that happened that day.
Okay. So, how is your memory about what happened that evening?
I tried to go to bed. That's all I remember.
Right? So, do you remember who was home, when you got home, when you started hearing things?
I remember my parents being there, my brother,
Okay.
my grandparents.
Remember your father's parents being there for a period of time?
I do remember them being there.
All right. Do you remember when they left?
I do not.
Okay. Were you still awake when they left?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, there you go. And what I'm interested in, I'm trying to figure out where your bedroom was. Remember that house? That garage?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Where was your bedroom?
In the back of the house,
So that's what I want.
the back corner.
Okay, I'm gonna put this picture, exhibit 2, show it. There's a laser up there. You recognize that, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Now this is what I think of as the front of the house. Is that fair?
Yes.
All right. Now, can you kind of show the jury where your room would be in this house if we walked in? Where would it be?
Can you see? If you need to stand up, you can.
You can stand up. Don't be shy about that.
If you came in through the garage right here,
Yeah.
and you went through the door, right, leading to the house, and then you went back to the back hallway, it's about in the middle of the house. And
Okay.
It was on the left.
Okay, so it's on towards the backyard, towards the
Corner.
how far back is it? Where the house, kind of where the house ends, or is it in the middle? Where's it at on that side there? Is your point to the
It's
park?
it's where the house ends.
Okay. All right. And if you looked outside is there more than one window in your bedroom at this time?
I believe there was 2 windows.
Okay, because I was going to ask you, if you looked outside your window, would one of the things you see would be the crow's house behind you?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then if you looked out the other window, what would you see?
If I looked out the other window, I saw the lady's house next to us.
Okay, and let me put up this is exhibit 1. And this is an aerial image, okay? I want to orient you. This is Smith Drive. And this is Lane Avenue that goes out to the park. And I believe that this area right here is where the pros live. So can you show us where your bedroom would be on this image?
Right there.
Okay, back there?
Yeah.
All right. So that would be completely the opposite side. Where were the Hembrees? Do you know where the Hembrees and the Blakes were when you were hearing these noises?
They were across the street at their houses.
Where's across the street? Over there. All right. Do you know if they were having a party that evening?
Yes, they were.
Okay. Do you remember, Mr. Eisenmenger talked to you about an interview with a detective, a female detective? You remember that?
Yeah.
He came, I think your mom was there?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And have you listened to the interview you had with the
No, I have not.
detective? All right. Do you think that was 3 days after this happened? Did you know that? It was on September 5th?
I don't remember when it was. I just know I did it.
Okay. But it was pretty close to when this happened, wasn't it?
Yes.
Do you remember what you told the detective?
I do not.
All right. Would listening to the tape refresh you on that?
Probably, yes.
All right. Do you think it would assist your memory in what you were doing and what you heard and what you saw back then? All right. I request recess.
May I have the attorney's approach, please? All right, ladies and gentlemen, at this time, we're going to excuse you from the courtroom. If you would please leave your notebooks on your chairs and make sure that you follow my instruction during our recess. We'll bring you back in as soon as possible. Thank you. Please be seated. All right, so the jury has been excused, and you may proceed, Mr. Leslie.
Let's start with this. What's your name? Ava? And how do you spell that? Okay. And then tell me what you heard that night. First time, I heard call my dad and looked in directly at back to them. Heard someone yelling on the screen. And I didn't get up that time to see having a body. So it was up to the woods. And then my mom dropped me out to first month of it. The second time, third time, was when she was on the phone talking to somebody to actually talk. Okay, you told me what it was. Do you remember what word it was? Yes, you first started words with. Did you hear what they were saying, or were they just yelling his name? Okay. Can you remember about what time that was? Can you think of anything else? Let me ask you this. You said the dog was moving back and forth between the rooms, like walking around. Could you tell what he was doing? Just walking. You don't know what's there? When you first went out there, you think? No.
And my question, were you able to?
Yes.
All right. And did you recognize the voices on that interview as something you participated in?
Yes.
Does that refresh your memory, at least about what you told the detective back
Yes.
then? And is what you told the detective, was that true, what was in your mind? That's
Oh,
what
yeah.
you
Yes.
knew then?
Mhm.
All right. I intend to go into that with her just to make sure what she heard, what she didn't. Well, there's more details, Judge, and I just want to get into, and there's things about which you now, I believe, you now know when approximately you got up. Did you hear yourself answering that question?
Yeah.
All right. Is that accurate now that you reflect on it?
I don't remember off the top of my head, but
Okay, so you can't say it was 11:30, hearing yourself say it was about 11:30?
I heard myself say 11:30, but it's so long ago I can't remember.
Okay. All right. All right, I'm ready to proceed, and then whatever's going to come out of it, okay?
Okay. All right, well, we'll see what the questions are, what the responses are, and if there's any objections to them, but otherwise we can bring the jury back in?
Yes.
Okay, let's bring the jury back in, please.
All rise. Jury's present.
We are ready. Please be seated. Jury is present in the courtroom once again, and ladies and gentlemen, did you follow all of my instructions during the brief recess? Yes. Is anyone aware of any violations of any of my instructions? No. You may continue, Mr. Rose.
Yes. Ms. Woodward, after you went to bed that evening in the room you've shown us, did you get up 3 times that particular
I did.
night and day?
I did get up.
And the first time you woke up, did you hear someone outside calling your dad's name?
I did.
And when you got up after that first time, what was your father doing?
He was sitting on the couch.
Okay. Well, let me ask this. Was he going in and out of his room?
Not till later.
Okay. Was he on the computer and then he turned it off?
He was out in the living room. I don't know exactly what he was doing.
Okay. Show us where you saw him. I mean, you got out of your bedroom. Where did you find your father?
In front of the house.
Okay. Now let me ask. So it was towards the front of the house? Is there a part of your house where there's a bunch of windows?
Yes.
Where is that on your house? And does it point towards Lane Avenue looking towards Park, or Lane Avenue looking towards Smith Drive?
It's more pointed this way.
Okay, so it's pointed towards Smith Drive. And would you see under that tree if you looked out those windows?
Yes.
See that big tree in the front yard?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So was your father in a room where that those windows were?
Yes.
Now, you went back to bed. Your father took you. You went back to bed.
Yes.
Back in the same bedroom you were in before.
Yes.
All right. And you're laying there, but you didn't go to sleep.
I did not go to sleep.
Okay. And while you're laying there, do you hear screaming?
I do.
All right. And did you associate that screaming with the party that was going on over at the Hembrees and the Blakes?
I just knew someone was screaming, and it sounded like it was coming from over there.
You didn't get up that time, right?
I did not.
And the reason you didn't get up is because they were having a party, and you figured that's what it was, right?
Well, they had been screaming the whole night,
Okay.
and I just didn't get up.
Okay. And then the next time you got up was when your mom got you up to go stay with your brother, right?
Yes.
Can you redirect?
Ms. Woodward, the screaming that Mr. Respis was asking about, is that the things that you said were threatening sounds?
Yes.
Those are the things that made you scared? And they were coming from over at the Pecor, Embry, Lake area?
Yes.
Just yelling your dad and calling him out and all
They
that kind
were.
of stuff that woke you up. Is that part of the threatening sounds?
Sustained.
They're calling you out, calling your dad's name out.
They were.
Okay?
As well
How
as
did that
having-
make you feel?
I was terrified.
Why were you terrified? They were just calling your dad's name.
Didn't know what they were gonna do.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
We didn't know what they were gonna do. They were having a party, but they were also calling our name.
And was that name calling that made you scared?
Yes.
Now, I understand it's been 5 years and it's hard for you to remember the exact details. But can you clearly, even 5 years later, remember your feelings?
Yes.
And what are those feelings?
Terrified. Scared.
Overruled.
Mr. Espis played the actual questioning, I guess, a couple of days after this event by Detective King Watts. Do you now, did that confirm that she didn't ask you about your feelings then?
Yes, sir.
Any recross? Okay, thank you very much. You may step down. Attorneys may approach. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go ahead and recess for the weekend. So I'm going to ask you all to, again, put your notebooks on your chairs. We'll lock them up for the weekend. Promised that we would be out of here by 4, so a little bit early for you all. Let me give you your recess instruction. During the break, you must continue to abide by the rules governing your service as a juror. Specifically, you are not to discuss the case among yourselves. This means no discussions about the case whatsoever, no matter where you are, including the deliberation room. Do not discuss this case with anyone else or allow anyone to discuss it in your presence. Do not speak to the attorneys, parties, or witnesses about anything. Also, do not conduct any research regarding any matters regarding or concerning this case. You must avoid reading any newspaper headlines and articles relating to this trial or its participants, and you are to avoid seeing or hearing any television, radio, or internet or social media comments about this trial, should there be any. As far as the schedule on Monday, I'm going to ask that you all be back at 10:30. Actually, 10:30 is appropriate, and so again, you have a little bit extra time this afternoon and a late start on Monday. So we will see you all on Monday. Have a very nice weekend. Please be seated. All right, the jury's been excused, and I know we talked about the schedule for Monday and discussing the jury instructions. The state indicated that you did receive a copy of the proposed instructions from defense, but haven't had a chance.
We received them
Right.
I received a hard copy this morning. I think Mr. Shiner received something last night. We haven't had a chance to do it.
Right, okay.
And in all candor, I didn't get a chance to look at them until this morning, and I've suggested a few minor changes, which we will, shoot over to the state as we may.
I think Mr. Shiner and I probably need to sit down and talk. I mean, primarily, we're going to be talking about justifiable instructions on how we would appropriately have that.
Right, so the state sent some proposed instructions, I think even at the beginning of this trial, and recognizing that obviously we were at the beginning and not certain as to what the evidence would present, but has the state revised or modified any of those proposed instructions since then or not?
We've not.
Okay.
I mean, we're going to go through, deal with the argument of what the evidence is in this case, and based on that, we're going to prepare an instruction in anticipation that we'll decide to give justifiable, how we think is appropriate based on circumstances of this case. That's what we're doing. We did do that, but there's modifications we need to do. I recognize that. Coming up with an instruction for you to read to the jury.
Correct. Right, that's Court Exhibit 3. So, in other words, the state is indicating that there's going to be argument as to whether it should even be given and if given, in what form. Okay. All right, so I just want to be clear, though, on where we're at, and so you all can be working on the proposed jury instructions over the weekend. Is there anything else we can accomplish this afternoon? Anything from the state?
No.
Anything from defense?
No, thank you very much.
Okay, so as far as Monday's schedule then, why don't we start at 8:30? And that way we can hopefully have everything accomplished in time for the jury when they arrive at 10:30. All right, thank you all very much. Have a nice weekend. We'll be in recess until Monday at 8:30.